We'll try to start at about 3:35. So, give us a few more minutes and then we'll kick everything off. All right. Thanks for your patience. I hope you can hear me. If you can't hear me, put it in the chat. Okay, great.
Afternoon, we're hearing fine. Thank you.
Great, good. Looking forward. Okay, everyone. People will keep joining, but I know it's your Friday afternoon. I'm mindful of that. We don't want to take up too much of your weekend time. I can see that I'm joined in the chat, in the participant list by my fellow alums who are going to be sharing with you today. We have Dr. Jason Toppin, we have Seychelle Doyley, we have Hakeem Angelou, and we have John Matthews. All right. So it's 3:34. We thank you all for joining, and just to let you know that it's recording, I hope. So it will be available on our social media pages. So you can follow us on Instagram at Harvard Jamaica, or on Facebook. Your young people don't use Facebook, but it's there as Harvard Jamaica Alumni Association. So it's now 3:35. So I'm going to begin. My name is Rebecca Tortello, and I am the oldest alum on this panel, but I don't look it, but I am. And I'm happy to be here with you today, and it's a much more efficient way. I think it may turn out to be a much more efficient way than events we've done in the past where we've gone school to school. So hopefully we'll do a fairly good job of giving you an overview of the process that's involved if you're thinking of going to a school like Harvard. While we're going to speak about Harvard specifically, what we're sharing is not specific to Harvard, but to school applications in general. So could I ask my fellow alums to put their cameras on to say hello? I'll quickly introduce you. We'll let you introduce yourselves. And then we're going to begin with Seychelle, who has another meeting quite soon. So Jason, where are you?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Just quickly, my name is Jason Toppin. I'm actually a physician. I'm a critical care doctor. I'm in charge of the ICU at the University Hospital currently. I guess I'll chat with you a little more later, but welcome.
Thank you, Jason. And I should have said to you that I lecture part-time at the university, and I also am an education specialist at UNICEF and an author. So we'll talk more later as well. Hakeem, where are you?
Right here. Hi, thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. My name is Hakeem Angelou. I take the he series of pronouns. I currently live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I graduated from Campion College in 2014, and I graduated, thank you, and I graduated from Harvard College with a double major in computer science and statistics and a minor in African American studies in 2020. Now I work for Google as a software engineer on their news team, where I tackle misinformation. And
Thanks, Hakeem, and we'll turn over to John. John, where are you?
Hi, I'm here. Hello, everyone. My name is John Matthews. I graduated from Campion College fifth form in 2012. Go Campion. And then sixth form in 2014. Then I took a gap year actually and applied to college within that gap year. So feel free to ask me questions about that. Then I went to Harvard and studied chemistry, graduated class of 2019. So I still consider myself in the young alum age range. And currently I am living in sunny Los Angeles, California, because I hate the cold. And I work for a multinational real estate firm in their new ventures department. All right, I'm really excited to have you all here today.
Thank you, John. And moving over to Seychelle.
Hello, everyone. I'm Seychelle Doyle. I'm our first year at the college, studying online here in Jamaica still, so I'm still enjoying the weather here. I am a proud Wolmerian in the bunch, and I'm excited to share a little about my story and application process that I had to go through last year, successfully getting into the college.
Great. So that's our panel, ladies and gentlemen, and we want to thank the NSSC for sharing this information, and we'll give you ways to contact us going forward. But you've heard from the three main panelists, Hakeem, Seychelle, and John, and they all took three different routes to get into the college. So Seychelle applied directly from sixth form from Jamaica. John took a gap year and applied in that gap year, applying again from Jamaica. And Hakeem actually left Jamaica after fifth form and went to a preparatory school in the Northeast and applied from there. So we're going to go quickly through the application process, which, as many of you know, or you're beginning to know, includes a written application, and that written application looks at grades, your essays, different types of essays, long and short answer, usually your SAT, although this year that was waived because of COVID, your extracurriculars, financial aid, and then if you're granted an interview, there's an interview. Not everybody that applies is granted an interview. So that's kind of how if you get shortlisted, then you get to have an interview, and then you wind up meeting people like me or Jason or other older alums who are here generally. So I want to turn it over to Seychelle, who's going to kick it off by telling us a little bit about what she thought helped, what worked well for her in her written application, her essays specifically. Then John will take over and talk about the extracurricular focus and suggestions he has on that front. And then Hakeem will kick in with financial aid, and Jason and I will round off everything with information about the interview process and strategies for interviewing successfully. And then we'll hopefully have some time for questions and answers. So Seychelle, over to you.
Right. Yeah, so the application process for me, I think it was a mix of trying to understand what is being asked from me, and also trying to figure out what kind of person do I want the college to think that I am, or figure out, how do I best portray myself to the college as a worthy applicant and as someone who is not just looking to, I guess, take advantage of the school, but also contribute something to it. But first, I will talk about just the beginning stages, thinking about Common App, which is where the application process starts. I think now in April/May is the right time to get started. It gives you kind of the summer to think about not just the schools that you'd be applying to, but also it gives you more time to reflect. I think starting early on these college applications would be my main advice. I remember, especially for my Harvard essay, kind of took me a while. I was up until the last minute, just trying to put the pieces together. But as it relates to the different types of questions, I think going in, I had this assumption that, okay, it was just about, you know, the grades, but it's more than that. And I think I can't say specifically what they're looking for, but I feel when we're having these conversations about what do we want students applying to think about is to understand that the college application process is about showing that you have several dimensions to yourself. I think as Jamaicans, we are a diverse group of people. We have what are your passions? We are filled with a lot of talent. And so I believe that that is important to sprinkle in your essay in ways that are unique to you as an individual. It's not about trying to impress some person sitting in a room reading your paper, but understanding that you are writing for a specific audience. And just as you are on your phone and you only read what's interesting to you, the persons reading the application also want to read your paper, and that will be important when you're drafting it. I think in terms of just taking the time to understand in the summer to understand, okay, what experiences have I been through? What has sort of made me become the person I want I am today? And maybe that will change. And what are you excited about change? These the college application can be that moment to share your voice. And there is lots of room for creativity. I remember when I was sort of thinking about the application process, I was amazed when, because I was very interested in watching YouTube videos, figuring out how did these people get in, and they were fortunate enough to share their stories. And persons write about just about anything. I think John has a very interesting story about what he wrote about. Some persons write about maybe their favorite snack, and it's how you're able to demonstrate something you're passionate about, show that you are, just have your image come off of the paper is the end goal, I think. And it's more about understanding that each of every person has something special to offer, and you just have to one believe it, and two learn how to representing yourself, because it's not that we are short of talent. It's not that we're not good enough. We just need to display find more unique ways of demonstrating that. And in I guess support is also important for the application process. It Whether that be uh, different educational services. I know I really benefited from talking to Miss Bromwell and also my guidance counselor at Wilmot, who Mrs. Ray High, if you can see me. And just getting that sort of feedback to say, am I on the right on the right track? Or even just a friend if that isn't available to you.
Mm.
Because the persons who know you the most can have a better sense of whether that's coming through in your application. And so it's important to kind of get that feedback as well. I would also say, um, I don't think it was the application process was set up to be daunting. I think the goal is to try to find the right fit. And so when you're also applying, it's important to do some research on Harvard and really try to figure out if it's the right school for you. What would you picture yourself doing on campus? How would you, as I mentioned in the beginning, not just take from the institution, because Harvard is extremely resourceful, but what can you add? And I think when you also highlight that, it says a lot about you as a person. And I think that can also be beneficial to your application. Um, yeah, it makes you more attractive when you highlight that you are an asset to the institution. And I think Right. I think the emphasis around those key points also just dedicating enough time, as I said, getting that feedback, as well as I'm just being very honest. I think when you take the time, you get to realize, more about yourself. I think the application process is definitely one of personal growth, and I hope some of that makes sense and that you will enjoy taking these first steps. But don't worry, you have enough time, and we want more persons to apply. That's why we're kind of having this whole event, and that's why we are trying to be as transparent about it as possible, because we want the Alumni Association in Jamaica to grow, and we're here to support their social media or any other contact to do that as best as possible.
Great, thank you, Seychelles. So you see, she pointed out she made some important takeaway points there to try and have a sense of who you are. What you're trying to do in that essay is get that point across. Think about the fact that the people who are reading these essays, and this is true of whatever school you're applying for, it's not unique to Harvard, that that you jump off the page, that you interest them, that you grab them, because they get a lot of applications. And, we do have the benefit that coming from Jamaica, people know Jamaica, there's a brand Jamaica. So when they see Jamaica, more often than not, people are like, oh, this could be interesting. So we at least have that sort of slight edge, which, you might not have if you're the 50th applicant from, the X borough of New York City, for example, right? So we want to make the most of that. And as Seychelles said, we really want the community to grow. I mean, Jason and I have been interviewing for a number of years, and in any given year, 1 year we may have one interview and the next year, no interviews. And so what we want is to build the community, get more applicants, because it is a process of growth. And going to Harvard was one of the best decisions that I made in my life. And, I don't regret it. The friendships I made, the professors that I had access to, the research I was able to do, the personal growth I was able to experience, it was everything in many ways I had hoped my college experience would be. And so thank you again, Seychelles, and let me turn it over to John. John is going to talk a little bit about his journey and sort of hone in on the well-roundedness, extracurricular point. I had the great honor and pleasure of interviewing both Seychelles and John. So I was very happy that they both got in. So John, over to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, hi everyone. So I just want to start off by really honing in on what Rebecca and Seychelles just said. The whole ethos of this process is that colleges are trying to find out who you are as an individual. And so a major part of that is by thinking of the story of who are you? What's your angle? What's your story going to be? Because one thing that people will say, which is actually a myth, is that, colleges want well-rounded people. What colleges actually want, they want well-rounded classes, but they want people who are all going to be interesting and come together to stitch, a wonderful fabric of people of different backgrounds, experiences, etc. And so what you want to do is through your extracurricular activities, and this goes for anyone who's applying to any American colleges, you may be familiar with the British and Jamaican way, which is looking at exam scores and your academics. That's only a part of the American equation. So extracurriculars from the American standpoint are very important. And what you want to do is you want to take a leadership role within them. You want to show passion. And so do not be the person who joins 5 clubs in sixth form and they were never involved before, because colleges will see straight through that and it will come across as ingenuine. So what you want to do is you want to start building those relationships from as early as fourth form, fifth form, even earlier if you can. And you want to really step up, because colleges want to see that you're making the most out of what you're given. And one thing that can actually help as well is if there's an area that you're super passionate and super interested about and that doesn't exist, then you can actually found that organization, because that's showing the college that you're serious about it. You have drive, you have leadership skills, all things that are very important to them. So for example, when I was at Campion, I actually founded the Medics Club, because even though we had a wide array of extracurricular activities, there was nothing for people who were pre-med. And for people who had a genuine interest in healthcare. So that was, my angle when I was applying to colleges. So of course, I went to college and had a self-discovery, so I'm not in the medical field anymore, but that's part of what the whole, nature of college and college admissions is about. So the second thing that I want to talk about with respect to extracurriculars as well is that you really want to make sure that what you're doing is tying into your narrative. So for example, if you are saying that you are super, super passionate about coding and you want to be the next great software engineer, but then none of your extracurriculars are about coding or about IT, computer science, and it's telling something completely different, and your recommenders are saying that, oh, actually you're interested in biology, then that's going to make the admissions counselors kind of scratch their head and be like, what's going on here? Who are we really trying to admit into, our institution? And then the final note that I want to leave you on when it comes to extracurriculars as well is, it's not just about your school. If you're involved in activities outside of school, for example, when I was back in Jamaica, I volunteered at the pediatric ward at UWI Hospital. That's something that formed a major part of my application as well. You can do that if you're a part of faith-based organizations, other community-based organizations, artistic groups. All of that is very helpful. They want to see that you're making an impact on your communities, both inside and outside of school. And why is this important? Because you have to think about it. They are looking for the people who, when they come to campus, they're going to be equally involved and help to drive that culture, that funness, and those creative experiences that people are going to look back on and say, yeah, college was the best 4 years of their life, which, similar to Rebecca, I can say that going to Harvard was one of the best 4 years of my life so far as well. Would 100% do it again. But those are my tidbits for now. I know we're going to have open Q&A later, but I want to hand it over to Hakeem now to tell us about financial aid.
Thank you, John. Yeah, that was a great series of pieces of advice, and I really agree with all of them. I think just to reiterate what you said in my own words, it's really important that you as an individual stand out from the group. They receive on the order of tens of thousands of applications every year. And they look for people who are different, who have something new to offer to the campus that doesn't currently exist there. So that's part of your job in the application. And I don't want all of this to sound like some big daunting task. This really is, a beautiful process in some respects, of course. But the act of finding yourself and knowing yourself and finding out what makes you different from other people and being able to express that in a good way and succinctly on something like an application is a skill that you will, that you will definitely use for the rest of your life. So even if the application does not work out to Harvard, I'm sure another school would love to have you. And even if it doesn't work out there, you will be using the skill for the rest of your life. So, and I think that ties into what I'm going to talk about, because that's one of the first reasons why a lot of people don't apply to a place like Harvard. They sit down and they say to themselves, wow, I don't think I can do what Hakeem, John, and Seychelle are telling me that I can do. But we're also here to tell you that you can do that. The fact that we did that means that you can do that, because we are not magical or necessarily fantastic or special. We had the resources and we had the people behind us to tell us that we could do it. And we are now here to be behind you and tell you that you can do it. And the second biggest reason that I think a lot of people from Jamaica don't use to justify not trying to apply to a place like Harvard is financial aid. And we keep saying a place like Harvard because You might want to apply to other schools in the United States. And this is something that really does set Harvard apart from some other schools, from actually many other schools. A few schools are like Harvard in the way that I'm about to explain, but Harvard is particularly unique in how generous they are with financial aid. Not very many schools offer the possibility of full financial aid for international students, so like students from Jamaica, very few. I'd say mostly very, very selective schools, but Harvard has been this way for a while now. And that's actually the reason why I was able to afford to go there. Harvard, I don't even know what the tuition is. I never knew. I never really looked at. I think it's something like 70,000 US dollars a year or something absurd like that. But I'm also here to tell you that very few people pay that. A minority of people at Harvard pay that full amount per year. A lot of people are on financial aid, so it's not a weird thing to be on financial aid. It's not a rare thing to be on financial aid. If you go to Harvard's campus and you look around at the students, you like the majority of the ones that you're seeing will be on financial aid in some way, and a lot of those still will be on full financial aid. I was on full financial aid, which meant that I didn't have to pay tuition, I didn't have to pay room and board. I paid nothing to be able to attend. Of course, I had several on-campus jobs that I used to supplement and go buy food and other fun things like that. But in terms of my day-to-day expenses, I paid nothing. And that was because I simply told Harvard what I was able to pay or what I and my family could pay. The thing is, the Harvard application process really separates your ability to succeed at Harvard from your ability to pay Harvard tuition. They don't even look at the second thing when they're looking at your application. It is what they call need blind. They assess your application, they assess who you are as a person, they figure out whether or not you are competent and interesting, and then they admit you. And then after that, literally after that, they don't even have the information beforehand. Literally after that, that's when they ask you, okay, how much are you able to pay? And if you can't pay the tuition, they'll say, okay, cool, we have a lot of donors who want students like you to be on campus. We are going to help you. We're going to pay it for you. And it's not a special thing. It's not a different thing. It's not a scholarship, which I think is a very large misconception, because scholarship implies that it is merit-based, that it is based on your grades or your other achievements. But Harvard says, listen, we looked at all those things already. We think you should be here. We're going to work as hard as we can to make sure that you can come here. So it's not merit-based. Once you get into Harvard, cool, you have access to all of these resources for financial aid. And that access is not contingent on anything. So getting in is the first step, and the step that I want you all to focus on, that I want you all to worry about. And then the second step is just letting them know what your income is, what your family's income is, and then they will take care of the rest. Yeah, and I mean, when you really look at it that way, there are very few reasons to not apply. The main thing that you will be paying is your time, because as Seychelle said, she was typing until the last second before submitting the application, etc. But as I mentioned at the beginning of my little segment, that time is also invested in finding yourself. That time is also invested in learning how to explain yourself and talk to people. And those are skills that are beneficial regardless of the outcomes of the process. So please apply. Please take the couple hours it will take to craft a good application. Talk to your mentors, your guidance counselors, your friends and family, have them read over your applications as well, and just submit it. And once you submit it, Rebecca and Dr. Toppin will talk about the interview process, which is also a very fun and rewarding process, regardless of the outcome. But things will be smooth sailing. And I really recommend that you believe in yourself and put yourself out there, and also know the facts about the schools. You all may go back to your parents and say, oh my gosh, I went to this Harvard workshop today. It looks so good. And then the first thing a lot of them might say is, Harvard, that school is expensive. then you can say to your parents, actually, no, that's a misconception. It is expensive for some people, but a lot of people are able to access financial aid. And then your parents are like, oh, okay, cool, let's do it. So yeah, apply, and also know that you have a network of people who want you to be there.
Thank you very much, Hakeem and John. See, I didn't have the honor or the privilege of interviewing Hakeem, but you can see by how Hakeem presented himself and his passion and so on, that had I had that opportunity, we would have had a great discussion and a great conversation. And that is actually what the interview process is all about. It's about a conversation. Not everybody gets to an interview, okay? So sometimes people apply, they don't get there. That decision is not made by us, it's made by the admissions office, and then they contact us and they say, would you be willing to interview so-and-so? So Jason, I'm gonna turn to you now, and then I'll chime in as well, since you and I are the older people in the bunch, or the more mature instead of older, let's say that. And, you know, turn over to some of your experiences, and you can share a little bit about your journey, please.
I would say older does not necessarily mean mature. I'm definitely older. I'll leave it at that. So the interview, and I would, couple points I'll try to make quickly. The interview is a conversation. And I think perhaps how we raise West Indian children, if you look at me as some different species, then we'll have a problem. If we're just two people on the same path, and you're maybe at a little different position, what you have, what you think, who you are is of absolute value. And if you can willingly and readily communicate your story to me, your opinions, we're off to a good start. If you look at this interview as a oral exam and they're right and wrong answers, then it's going to be a little stiff, it's going to be a little rigid. I think one of the themes is we're rooting for you. I want you to give me information that I can put on this piece of paper and sell this young lady, this young man. What's different, what's special? So practice. I'd say it might be intimidating. Somebody you've never met, maybe has some job that you assume makes them mature. And it can be intimidating, but no, understand that this is about you and the value of what you think. I think one of the things I'd like to get from an interview is we have some accomplishments on a piece of paper. You give me the context. Yes, you were the captain of this team. You like Spanish. Give me some context to your Spanish interest. Where did it start? What was special? What did you do to accomplish things related to that event? Then it becomes not just he was the captain of the Spanish club or the chess club. My interest in chess arose from X. I put so much in it. This is why it meant so much to me. And I can put that context down, and all of your stories, all of your accomplishments have something special. And it's not just, this is the grade you got, this is why you want to do X, this is why you want to do Y. And it really is, I'll say when I sit down for an interview and the ideas and the thoughts are flowing, you can respectfully disagree. Oh, Jason, Dr. Toppin, I understand that view, but I actually think that this is the situation. This is what has worked for me. And I understand that view, but no. If you're comfortable enough in yourself to do that, which is not always, then you're in with a head start. And the interview, I think starting with Seychelles, if you thought about yourself, your story, your context, all that is what you're going to bring to that interview, and you're going to try and sell that. Put everything that you have done, I have done on this piece of paper, and I'm going to have no problem writing pages about why you belong in Cambridge. Those would be my 2 cents. I'll take questions later, and I'll kind of hand you over to Rebecca to add her perspective on the interview process.
Yeah, so just to pick up on what everyone has been saying, so the point about the interview process being a conversation is a critical one. I have been asked to interview some students, and Jason's point about maybe the way we raise our children to approach this type of thing more like an exam than a conversation is a disservice to you all when you're preparing for this type of experience. So, I've asked a student, for example, to tell me why did they apply? Why did they choose to apply? That's a pretty obvious question. It's if you were going to brainstorm questions, that would be an obvious one that you would expect. So you could prepare, like Jason is saying. I'm sure online there's a lot of information, and we'll be posting some information too and links on our social media, and we'll share it with the ministry that they can share with the NSSC, etc. But, when I asked that, one answer that I got was, well, I'm applying to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, Columbia, I don't know, whatever else. And that's not something that I can, as a person who has to write and try and sell you, can really work with. So I had to kind of backtrack and say, okay, I'm going to start over because I can't use that answer. And what you need to know is that none of us as alums doing these interviews for whatever school are trying to hurt your chances. We are trying to work with whatever information you are able to give us and what kind of vibe we feel from you as you share your story and you learn about us, because, the interviewees ask us questions too, and they want to know how our experience was, and they want to know what we're doing now. And that kind of a conversation is really critical. And there are a few more things that begin with the letter C that when I do these talks to schools, I kind of reiterate, right? And so when you're thinking about your application in general and the narrative that you're trying to craft with the help of your family, your friends, your guidance counselor, whoever you're going to be reaching out to, I want you to think about these 8 C's. Now, there are 8 of them because 8 is my lucky number. It's not really any other reason why there are 8. I didn't start out trying to get to 8, but I reached 8. And one is curiosity. So when I interviewed John, I could tell right away in the conversation that we had that this was a curious young man. And how did I know that? Because he was able to tell me different topics, different subjects he was interested in, courses online he took of his own volition. Nobody was forcing him to do it. He just wanted to learn. The way he spent his summers all reinforced his narrative and his curious mind. He's creative. So there was no club that was linked to something he was interested in. So he created it. He started it. And that showed that he also would be able to work as a team. So it's just as important to lead as it is to be part of a team. It isn't good to only be in leadership positions, because what they ask us, one of the things they ask us is, can you see this student easily fitting in, sitting in a dining hall on the college campus and engaging in conversation with people from all walks of life, different countries, different languages, different ethnicities, different philosophies of life? Will they be able to navigate well in that system? So, does your application show commitment? Are you confident when you're having this conversation with us? Are you willing to collaborate? That's the teamwork part of it. Can you communicate? That's the conversation part of it. Do you have some sense of a social conscience? Have you been doing things over time? John was talking about, showing commitment to your community. Are you aware of what's going on in your country? I've had instances where I've interviewed Jamaicans and asked, what do they think is the most pressing problem the country is facing? And they were not able to answer that question. They had to really stop and think about that for quite a long time. And the last C, and I'll share this with Ruth Lawrence at the ministry, and she can share it with you all, is critical thinking, right? So have you shown that you can think critically? So those 8 C's are things that I look for when I'm interviewing, and I think Jason would agree. He may not have come up with the C's, but he was referencing many of them when we're having this conversation. And it is, we take time out to do this. We do it in our free time because we want to help other students start their journeys, and we want them to experience what we experienced, and then to hopefully contribute back to Jamaica in some way in the future. So that's really, I think, a bit, unless any of the panelists, Seychelles had to leave, unfortunately, but if any of the remaining panelists wish to add anything, we can, if not, we can open to questions. So I want to shout out Rihanna, who's helping to co-host this from the NSSC. Thank you, Rihanna. And also thank you to Ruth for making this happen before we even go to the questions. So John, Hakeem, Jason, you want to add anything before we open up?
The only thing I'll add to the interview is something that I hope will help underscore how conversation should be, which is, I walked in, I said to my interviewer, hey, I am nervous. I'm nervous because I really want to get into Harvard, and I've been thinking about this for a very long time. So if you see me like fidgeting, if you see me doing that, that's because of my nervousness. And my interviewer was so kind and so generous and ready to make the space more comfortable so that we could have a nice, comfortable conversation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we got into an argument about some theory around something. So this is going back to some stuff that Dr. Toppin was saying. Yeah, like get into an argument with your interviewer. If you like strongly believe something and you have like very strong convictions about something, and it's something that you have like read about, learned about, maybe you yourself have taught about it, then if your interviewer disagrees with you, then feel free to flesh that out in a respectful argument. When I say argument, I'm not talking about a fight. I'm saying, don't be a yes person. Don't be like, actually, yes, interviewer, I agree with everything you're saying. No, you say no, differentiate yourself from other candidates and also the interviewer by letting your personality and your opinions and your beliefs stand out. So, just keep an eye on the power dynamic and really understand that on both sides are trying to make it as level as possible so that we can have a nice conversation.
Yeah, I think you all summed it up pretty well. The last thing that I would say on the interviews, though, is make sure you're comfortable and don't be psyched out. Because I remember my interview with Rebecca very clearly. And I remember as I was stepping into the room, she was just like, oh, don't worry, this is going to be a conversation for 20 minutes. It actually lasted 2 hours. And it was just a fantastic conversation. But I remember after that, so I applied to Harvard Early Action, which we can get into early action versus regular decision. I got in early action, but I applied to Harvard's rival, regular decision. And that interview, I could have sworn I was going to get rejected because it was 15 minutes. It was the driest conversation ever. It was just like, okay, who are you? What do you do? Et cetera, et cetera. Okay, thank you for your time. Bye. But I still ended up getting in. But if I did not maintain that composure, it could have ended up, going completely south because I could have gotten into my head midway being like, okay, I'm comparing this to my Harvard interview. It's going so terribly, yada, yada, yada. So with everything, everyone has a different interviewing style. And so I believe all of us on this panel would probably be more conversational and trying to get to know you as an individual, but not all interviewers are that way. So just remain confident, calm, and collected, keeping with the theme of C's here.
So, I would just add to that quickly that my interview was different. So like Hakeem, I went to Campion, but then I left, and John, and then I left and I went and did a year at a school like Hakeem in the Northeast. That's a whole nother story. So I applied from that school, and I have dual citizenship. So I applied both with Jamaican and American citizenship, right? Which puts me in a slightly different category. Some of you out there might have that dual citizenship thing happening as well. But my interview, they come to those schools and they recruit. So they came and they did an interview, and, I had a fine conversation. We talked about Jamaica. The guy was interested in Jamaica. People are always interested in Jamaica. Okay, so you sell Jamaica. He wanted to know what was my favorite part of the island and why, and if I was going to recommend a vacation spot for him, where would it be and why, and what did I think the country was facing, the challenges thing. I had a lovely conversation, and then he said, you haven't been here long enough for me to look at your academics. Now, that is not the case in general when you all are applying, because they send us that information. So a lot of the conversation, we don't even bother. We already know, how many ones you got or how many whatever, and if you placed in the Caribbean and blah, blah, blah. We know that. So, and in fact, if that is sort of how they break you down, right, into how you even get the interview. You have to be able to stand out in some way. By your essay, by your grades, by your commitment, your narrative that they pick up from the application as a whole, and then they want to learn more, so they send you to the alumni to do the interview. And so he said to me, come back to my office, I'm going to call you back to my office in Harvard Square, because the school was in Massachusetts, in January. And I thought, I'll never see this man again. It was a lovely conversation, but I'll never get in. but I tried. So, but in fact, he called me and I went. And I got lost on the way to the office, navigating the place. And I asked a lady for directions, and it just happened that she happened to be Jamaican. So she walked with me to the place, and I thought, well, this is a good sign. This could be a good luck thing. So I walked into the man's office, and he was on the phone, and all around his office were posters of famous football players, like from all European clubs and South American clubs. And I thought, how does this American man have these? This is crazy. Like, how does he know who all these football players are? This time we have no football team that's playing at that level, because that's how old I am. And we would root for Brazil. And this was right after the World Cup, where Maradona had handballed the goal. So he comes off the phone, and I say to him, Mr. So-and-so, how do you have what a collection? And I named the football players. This time I don't even play football, but I knew who the football players were, right? Because my brother played football, and I watched the World Cup. Just because I don't play doesn't mean I didn't watch it. And, we had a long conversation about the World Cup. And then, he asked me, well, what would you do if you came here? And why do you want to go here? And you did well in your grades. And we had and I told him about the lady that I met who came with me, and how maybe it was a good sign. And so all of those things, it was really a conversation. And 3 years later, when I'm a junior and I'm watching the World Cup now, that happened to be in America at the time, and I turn on the TV, the man who had interviewed me, with whom I had stayed in touch, because, I would bring him Jamaican coffee and whatever when I came home and came back, because it's always good to make friends with people in the admissions office in general. And it's very helpful. And turned out that he was one of the commentators on the NBC feed of the World Cup, because he had been a professional Irish football player. So the point of this story is that I did not know any of that. You could never have prepared me for that interview. Nobody actually prepared me. I just went in with my natural curiosity that, wow, and I was observant, look at these pictures. How does he have Zico and Falcao and Pele? And I named them all. And, and so that kicked off a good tone. So if you can hold that composure, show your curiosity, show your awareness of things, in the world, and be engaging, it makes that interview job so much easier for us, because then we have to fill out quite a comprehensive document. It takes a fair amount of time, and they ask some thought-provoking questions, and we want to be able to back up the numbers that we give because we have to score, on 1 to 5, and then they give us space to expound. And the more we can expound, the better we can sell your cause. So I'll put I see questions popping up. I'll put the 8 C's in the chat while we open the floor to questions. Okay? So anybody has questions, you can raise your hand. Let's see the chat. Brianna, help me here with the questions, please. 8 C's. Any question? It doesn't have to be for me. It can be for any panelist.
I see Ramig has their hand up.
All right. Can you unmute?
Yes, I can.
Okay, go for it.
Hi, everyone. I would like to know more about the SAT preparation part, mainly an experience. So I would like to hear someone's experience when preparing for the SAT, preferably someone who was in the island at the time. Okay, that's the question.
So I can take that. So SAT prep, first of all, give yourself a couple months. It will take a while. I would say there are programs out there, such as Versen, AIM, etc., that can help you to prepare, because there are some very tactical techniques that you can use. So I did use AIM for both the SAT prep as well as the as well as the actual advising part of the application as well. But for SAT, and I'm going to give my advice into 2 segments, one being the general SAT and 2 being the subject test. So with regards to the general SAT, what really helps is practice, practice, practice. So when you're practicing, first of all, get your hands on as many practice papers as possible. I wish I still had my question bank, because I actually found some resources online. But what you want to do is for every test, you actually want to take it timed because that's the biggest hurdle of the SAT. And you also want to create what's called an error log, because what you'll probably start noticing is that you're probably making the same types of errors across multiple exams. And so what you should do is, after you are able to see those trends, you should actually stop just doing the entire exam, because that's not how you can best and most efficiently use your time. Now just focus on those conceptual areas that you're having trouble with, and just do questions relating to those topics across multiple exam papers until you start getting them correct. And so I did that, and my scores started to go way up, because usually, again, time is usually an issue of the time crunch, as well as one or two specific topics that's tripping you up. Then the second thing with regards to SAT subject tests, thankfully, SAT subject tests tend to align with the CAPE curriculum very well. So I actually did SAT subject tests for biology, chemistry, math, and French. Oh, and physics. Wow, I did 5, I guess. And so with the subject test, I actually did not need to study for any of the subject tests except for biology. And that's because the American biology syllabus, they go into some topics that we do not. So I did have to self-study that section. But for most of them, I was actually able to just take them pretty much based upon my CAPE knowledge. That being said, though, I will caveat that by saying I did all of this within a gap year. So I had gone through the full 2-year syllabus of CAPE at that point. I don't know how much the overlap is if you've only done CAPE Unit 1. I don't know if anyone else on this call can give advice with regards to that, but yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
I think actually it's a good strategy for studying in general that you've reiterated, John. But there are questions coming in the chat about how early should you apply. You generally start to prepare, your application. John and Hakeem, would be like the summer before it's due, the fall, right? Meaning that when I say prepare, like you have the forms and you start to, I'm sorry for the background noise, there's always construction going on in this neighborhood. You start to fill out those forms, but what you're going to be referencing on those forms would go back multiple years. So like John had said, you can't just be in 5th form or 6B and you just pick up something. If you pick up something, it has to be you picked up something and you're at a really high level of what you've picked up. Like you've just skyrocketed to a pretty impressive part of whatever it is you've started. Questions about GPA. Hakeem, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, for sure. I can answer questions about GPA, SAT testing, that type of stuff. So the straightforward answer to this question is there is no like published, if you get under this GPA, don't even bother applying because we will not admit you, neither for the SAT or ACT. I will say though that you can look up online like average GPA for Harvard, and there are other services that will try to estimate that for you. I think it's something like a 3.9 for the average GPA, and for the SAT it's 1520, and for the ACT it's 34. But I wouldn't like stress over those numbers. I wouldn't like look at those numbers and say, okay, I got a 3.75, let me not apply. I think that you should still apply, and you should try to make up for any shortcomings that you see in your application in other parts of the application that might be stronger. So spend a bit more time on your essay if you'd like, or spend some more time detailing your extracurricular activities if you think that that is necessary. But there is no strict cutoff, and I really encourage you to apply, even if your scores may seem lower than the scores that you see online. One of my favorite like quotations, like words to live by, is to walk through life with the confidence of a mediocre white man, because those people will be applying anyway. They will be applying anyway. You need to have the confidence in yourself to, even if you don't meet the posted requirements, to apply anyway, because there really is no downside.
All right, and if I can quickly add on the GPA question too, I noticed that someone said, how would you find out your GPA because your school doesn't use the GPA system? So for example, I went to Campion. I also thought that we did not use the GPA system, but they are calculating that in the back end. So you may think your school does not, but double check with your guidance counselor, because they may actually do that GPA calculation, and then they do whatever conversions that they use to actually get you back to the 4.0 system. And then the second thing as well is, I imagine most of you are probably not in upper sixth form as well. If you do find out your GPA and you realize that it's not where you would want it to be, you have time to fix that. And so there's this very important metric when they use at the GPA. One, they look at the number, but they also look at the trend. And if you have an upward trajectory, then that also tells a very positive story that you can, blame away on immaturity or whatever the reason was. But most importantly, you're showing how you have grown and what you've learned and how you will be as a member on that campus. And in terms of upward trajectory, I also didn't have like the best start out in college as well. I remember speaking with my guidance counselor, and she was looking at my record and she's just like, John, what happened? Like, there's a clear cutoff where, your grades just started to improve. And so that's not a myth, like it actually does work. So just wanted to leave you on that note with regards to the GPA as well.
Thank you, John and Hakeem. They're also asking questions about the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic in terms of extracurricular activities. So people recognize that, right? I mean, that's not unique to Jamaica. It's a global phenomenon. So people recognize that, you might have been playing or representing your country in a sport and you haven't been able to compete or do anything for how long. That's not your fault. So, there might be a story in how you continue to be able to connect with your sport or whatever your service opportunity was, or have you pivoted, and how did you pivot and why did you pivot and so on. So don't get too bogged down in the pandemic. I mean, for example, as a result of the pandemic this year, many schools, Harvard included, just didn't ask for the SATs, right? So what happened is they had more people. Many schools had more people than ever before applying because now they didn't have to take the SATs, and there were no cutoff numbers, for the applications to come in above and so on. And so you had lower than normal acceptance rates at schools because you had higher than average numbers of people applying, right? So that's probably going to take another year or so to settle down. And then they may or may not go back to the SAT. I mean, some articles are saying that it may not survive. Some people are saying it may shift. We don't know, right? But in the meantime, it doesn't hurt to take it. If you test well, it can't hurt you. If you can take it and it's available and it's safe and you can take it and you're going to do well because you respond well to that kind of, you perform well on that kind of test, it's only going to help your case, right? I would think that's what I've been told. So I don't know, Jason, you want to add, or Hakeem?
I would give just a quick perspective on the whole idea of the extracurricular. If you look at it as this is something I'm going to do to apply, then that's maybe the wrong approach. If you look at it as what do you believe in, what are you really interested in outside of academics? And I think it's better you have one thing that you are really committed to, that you believe in and you're accomplished in, then you have 5 little activities that you can put out on a piece of paper. If I use the example of I do Spanish, okay, I am completely fluent in Spanish. I'm familiar with the culture in Cuba, and that's a totally different level from, I do some Spanish. So it's what do you believe in? What are you genuinely interested in? If you're doing an activity, an outreach, do it, be committed to it, be accomplished in it, have a track record. If it's just what can I do to put on my application, you're not going to get as far. When you talk to me about it, you're not going to convince me that there's some real context and depth there. It's just going to be an activity that you put down.
Yeah, I want to add to that from an experience I had with a student as well. Again, this was another Campion student. You don't have to be a Campion student to apply. Let me reiterate that, or to get an interview. But this was another Campion student by chance, and she got in, but she, she had a particular focus, which was the sciences, which is often the case. doesn't have to be, but it somehow seems to be the case. It's as if students who do sciences think they can apply. That's not the case, but maybe some of you will change that trajectory or that pattern. But one of the things that struck me when I interviewed her was that one of the things she talked about that she really enjoyed from her Campion experience was that she had participated in a play or a musical that the school had put on with Kathy Levy's players. And it was like a version of Cinderella. And she was not the star of the play. She didn't all of a sudden just decide to act. She wanted to learn. She was interested in architecture. She was interested in design, even though she had a strong scientific background, you know, that she could have been an engineer or whatever it was. She was interested in a lot of things. And one of the things she conveyed in her interview was that she was testing them out. John did the same thing. He talked about how he was exploring his different interests, and he gave examples of what he was doing. And I saw it on the form, and I asked him, and he was able to elaborate on it. And she did the same. And so what did she do? She wasn't the lead. She wasn't, you know, she was making the sets in the background. And she was doing that because, you know, she was interested in architecture and in how design was involved. And she was quite happy to be part of the team. So whereas she was a leader in other aspects, like Jason is saying, you know, if you're going to speak Spanish, come and tell us that, prove that you're fluent or that you have great competency in the language, and if you haven't traveled, you know, you watch Spanish movies, you listen to Spanish music, you have something that can back up that interest. That's what she was able to do. She wasn't even interested in theater, but she was interested in design. So this was an outlet for her through her school to explore it. And so she did. And that, to me, that augmented her narrative. So don't get the idea that you have to be the best at whatever extracurricular. That's another point we're trying to make. You don't have to be the best, but it's stronger if it fits into a narrative. That's what we're saying. And if it reflects quality.
I think if I could use the word passion and not interest, then you're in with a bit of a head start. If I say this person is passionate about Spanish, then they're kind of interested. If you can sell passion, then
yeah, because the truth is we can pretty much tell. It's pretty obvious when you're doing these interviews and you're asking questions if it's something that you just picked up to do for the application, because it just doesn't play out effectively.
And on that note, I did see a question in the chat as well, where someone asked, what are the most vital parts of the application? So as you probably can hear from what we're talking about, I'd personally believe the most vital parts are your essays and your letters of recommendation and your interview, because those are all the touch points in which you're really getting to see who you are as a person. The way that you think about academics are, there's a bar that you have to pass, but you'll never get in because of academics. Because, for example, yes, I did CAPE and I got the ones and I got the top 10 placements, etc. But when I actually got my admissions letter with a handwritten note, and I actually also got to view my admissions file with the feedback from the interviewers, not once did they mention anything about my academic performance. It was always about, you know, my commitment to helping others, my extracurriculars, the qualities that came out in my interview and my essay. So it's more about the human element of it than it is about the numbers and the stats that, you know, you would see broadcasted on any college admissions website.
Because those are kind of a given, right? We don't, so there's, you know, other than explaining why, in John's case, why did he like French? Because John had come first in French in the region or something like that. So why did he like French? And then he talked to me about that, but I wasn't, you know, it was the grade level was, it was not, I don't know how Jason approaches it, but I don't usually spend a lot of time going over the grades, because again, it's just, that's like a given. You got good grades, that's why you are applying to the school, you know, that's why you've gotten through a certain round, and now it's your passion and your interest in the school. The fact that John had done research, and Seychelles as well, and all the other ones that I've interviewed, had done research on the school, so they could say, well, I'm interested in engineering, and the school has this faculty and that, and, you know, these professors are there and they're doing this kind of research, which I read online, which sounds really curious to me, and, you know, I could see how I would learn from that, or, you know, I'm thinking about this topic and that topic related to it. That helps. Somebody's asking, how do you mentally prepare for the interview? I mean, Jason had said, you know, you can practice. You practice Watch interviews on, there probably are interviews online. I haven't checked that, but practice with a friend. And, you know, John mentioned, just try to stay cool and remain composed. Hakeem said it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be nervous. You tend to perform. If you're not nervous, then you don't really necessarily care what's happening. So we know that you're nervous, and we try well, I try, I'm sure Jason tries. We try to dispel that nervousness so that we can have a conversation, right? But John pointed out that's not true for everybody. So you have to be able to be comfortable within yourself.
Right. And as a quick follow-up, since we're just on interviews, I also saw a question where someone asked, what's a typical admissions interview like? The short answer to that is there is no typical process, because I also interviewed, not Jamaicans this year, but I interviewed students this year, and Harvard gives a rubric that they want to see that they want you to grade people on. But apart from, there's no other direction. So the interviewer is able to guide that conversation how they want. Now, the things that they look for are areas that all four of us have touched upon so far. So they're going to ask you about your personal qualities. They're going to ask you about your extracurriculars, and they're going to ask us to grade you on your academic vitality. And by the way, academic vitality does not mean how many A's did you get. It does not mean what your score was. They want to know, are you curious? Are you the kind of person who would contribute to original research? Do you have strong conviction behind why you're studying what you're studying? So it's less about the scores and more about your motivation.
You know, what do you get from that? Oh.
Somebody in the chat is also asking about sixth form and whether sixth form is a requirement. If you're applying directly from Jamaica, sixth form would be a requirement, I would think, because you have to have a complete high school degree, right? And so fifth form is really considered to be 11th grade in America, technically. So sixth form would be 12th and 13th grade. So like 12th grade is their senior year, and 13th grade would be like a PG year or a post-grad year. Yeah, so sixth form would be required. Somebody's asking if after high school I attend UWI, can you apply? Yes, you can apply to Harvard Graduate School, and there are many different graduate schools, and there's different financial aid options. Hakeem is actually on his way to graduate school. Hakeem, I don't know if you want to touch on that. I went to the School of Education, so I went to Harvard undergrad, and I studied history and literature, and then I worked, tried different things that I was interested in, all the while tutoring and volunteering. Then I went to the School of Education and got my master's in education. And then I went back to work, and then I did research and did a fellowship. And then I decided I would do my PhD. So now I have a PhD. So I'm Dr. Tortello, but I'm not a medical doctor like Jason. So, you know, you take different paths and you can go to different graduate. I didn't do my PhD at Harvard. I did it at Columbia. So I went to New York eventually, but Hakeem is more current, so you could speak to that. Hakeem is heading to the business school.
Yes, so I mentioned before that I graduated from Harvard College last year in 2020, and I got admitted through a deferred admissions program to the Harvard Business School. Deferred admissions just means that I have a spot in a class for the next 4 years, so I can choose to go when I'm ready. Now, yeah, so that's one thing I don't think that we've broken down yet, which is that there are different schools. So I think when we're talking about Harvard, to you all who are primarily high school students, we're talking about Harvard College, which is the undergraduate school, the undergraduate program. But there are other schools in the university. So there is the business school, there is the Graduate School of Education, there is the medical school, the law school, the School of Public Policy, all of those different things. All of those schools are designed, all of those schools except the college, so all the non-college schools are designed for people who have completed an undergraduate degree somewhere else. So for the person who was asking in the chat, can you go after you have gone to UWI? Yes, you can go after you've gone to UWI, but you can only go to one of the graduate schools. You cannot go to Harvard College after you've gone to UWI. They do not accept people who already have a bachelor's degree. So yeah, the graduate school is really for honing in on one of the topics, for really developing expert level understanding craft for one of these topics. And I plan to do that soon as well.
All right.
There's another question about aviation and whether Harvard offers aviation. I don't think there's a pilot training program at Harvard. There would be more sort of aviation research, like how to do, like what are the people that work on planes called, like biomechanical engineers or that level. You would be able to get a pilot's license through an affiliate program somewhere in Boston if you wanted to, I'm sure, but it's not known for aviation, no. Question.
And another point on the whole Harvard College thing, which I think is the primary focus of this talk, but not necessarily the only focus. But Harvard College is a liberal arts school. That term was new to me when I applied. I think, you know, it is a very different way of thinking about college, university. Liberal arts, it means that you are trained in a broad swath of things. So you don't go to Harvard or a school like it, many schools in the United States, you don't go with a specific plan to be something or study something or do something like that. They really highly encourage you to try a large, you know, variety of different things. And then, you know, maybe in your second year, your third year, decide what exactly you would like to focus on. But you don't go with that intent to a place like Harvard. They really do want you to try different things, and it's built into the curriculum. You are required to take classes from every single group of majors that they have, because they want you to be exposed to all of those things. John mentioned before that he went in planning to be a doctor after going to Harvard. I also planned to be a doctor. I was studying medicine. And I was studying neuroscience my first year at Harvard. After my first year, I went abroad and I did some research, and the research heavily involved computer science. And it was after that experience that I decided, hey, I don't want to do this medicine thing anymore. I want to go into computer science. So I started taking computer science classes. I liked it, and I continued down that path. A lot of people, probably most people at Harvard, have some story like that, where maybe they didn't do as dramatic of a change, but they discovered something new about themselves. They discovered that they liked something. They discovered that they didn't like something. And in my opinion, that is a very, very good way to spend that part of your life, because what you think you want to do right now, I promise you, you will probably not be doing exactly that in 10 years. You really do need to be exploring and trying different things, because there's a very limited set of information at this point in your life. John, I think you're going to say something.
I would just quickly, there was a question about courses.
Yeah.
If you are really curious, and I haven't looked at the course book used to make my head hurt, because I couldn't narrow down what I can only pick.
It's
5 or 6 is kind of ridiculous for a semester.
Yeah.
Which ones am I gonna pick? What am I gonna leave out? And it forces you into different areas. I did biology. I wanted to be a marine biologist. I erred. I'll admit at this point, maybe I erred in where I am now. But I did like 4 history courses in my time. That was just purely off of interest. This area seems interesting. Let me go see this. And I ended up doing 4 history courses.
Because somebody asked about a double major. So some majors are already there themselves as a double major. So like mine was history and literature it exists as a double major in its own department. And that means you have to take a certain number of history courses and literature courses for different periods that cover different periods of time. And then you can pick the countries that you're focusing on. So I did America and the English-speaking Caribbean. Now they didn't have an English-speaking Caribbean discrete program. So I had to go and craft that and find professors in the university or in affiliated universities in the area, because at that time the internet connectivity isn't what it is now, who could help me along my way. And then it was an honors major, which meant I had to write a thesis. Then if I had wanted to be pre-med, which I did not want to do, but if I had wanted to, I would have taken certain science courses as well that would have then allowed me to take the MCAT, which is the what is that called? Like the SAT for medical school. And then I would have gone from my 4-year undergraduate liberal arts course program into a medical school somewhere, which is what Jason did. And came back to the Caribbean to do medical school. Or Hakeem did a double major as well, that I think you probably crafted. You can put things together and craft a double major, but you still have to complete a certain number of courses in what's called the core. And the core is that liberal arts rooted program that Hakeem was explaining. And the reason for that is that they want to believe, and they hope to contribute to creating well-rounded individuals who, if you're interested in the sciences, you're not going to leave your 4 years with only having done science courses. So because you're focusing on majoring in biology, you would be exempt from some of the science courses in the core. So the core will have science and humanities courses and foreign cultures courses and, research type courses or writing courses, and you have to fulfill within those. So I was exempt from one history and one literature because my major was history and literature. That meant I had to do all the science course, right? So if you're not a science person, you have to do all the science course. And if you are a science person, you have to do all of the non-science course. But within those core subjects, there's a range of course topics that you cannot even imagine. And in fact, quite a number of these are now available online. If you go to edX or HarvardX and look at them, you can take them. You can take them yourself now, and you can take them for free. You just don't get a certificate, but you can take them and see what it's like. And that actually is a helpful thing to do, whether you apply to Harvard or not, because it would show you're interested in something and you went online of your own, drive and initiative, and you did this. And you might learn from it. It shows curiosity, one of the C's, right? I don't know, Hakeem, if you want to talk about the major that you crafted, but there's one other question which says they understand it's an Ivy League school, but what was our best? What did we like the best out of it, or so on? And,
Right.
and I would say that for me, it was the people that I met, right? It's the friends that I've made with who I'm still friends today, how many years later, who have gone on to do a host of different things and from whom I continue to learn and who continue to inspire me. So it was the people, my friends, but also my professors who, helped me. I don't want to also underestimate the value of your connecting with your teachers, right? So it's a big school in some degree. It's not huge, but it's not that small. And you can go to, professors all have office hours, and you can go and talk to them. You also will have graduate students who are helping to teach in what's called sections. You can get to know them. And these are the people that help you to figure out your next step and might write references for you, just as your high school teachers will be writing references for you now. So you need to find at least one or two people that you connect with. And it should be organic. That's built out of your passion, right? And what you're interested in.
All right. So if we can pivot a bit, because I actually have seen a lot of questions coming in asking about the Harvard experience. So I think Hakeem and I might be able to touch on that a bit, but this may sound a bit controversial, but despite Harvard being a great academic institution, I'm glad you guys asked the question, but the experience is actually what made it worth it. Your best memories will come from outside of the classroom. So everyone at Harvard tends to be super involved, either if they're academically minded and want to go into research, go into a PhD program, they'll do research. There's also a thriving extracurricular community there. So as a quick example, despite the fact that I was a chemistry major, the first thing I did when I went to Harvard is actually join the polo team, which is like hockey on horses. I was able to walk onto that. I was also involved in numerous other activities, including the Wine Society, the Caribbean Club, of course, that was a given. Healthcare Associates, even though I didn't become a doctor, I'm still interested in the field. And also probably the thing I'm most proud about or most passionate about, which was this show called Eleganza, which is a fusion between a fashion show and a dance show. So on the extracurricular front, there are over 500 different clubs and activities. Whatever you want, it's probably there. If it's not there, Harvard will support you and give you money to actually create it. Now, on the social standpoint, the beauty of going to school in Cambridge is that you're actually surrounded by a ton of other schools. Boston has the greatest like number of students per capita. So social life, when you're talking about it, it's often blended in terms of you will be socializing with people from MIT, Boston College, Boston University, Northeastern, Wellesley, and the list can go on. And even extracurricular organizations do create forums where you can actually meet people from those schools and form those friendships and those relationships. And also just speaking like as a person of color, there's also a thriving Black community on campus as well, in which I can genuinely say that by the time I graduated, I knew every single Black person within my year group. We have a consortium of all Black clubs called the BCL, Black Community League. So you have the African clubs there, the Caribbean clubs, the Black Men's Association, the Black Women's Association, etc. And we all support each other's events. We, hang out with each other in the dining hall, etc. So it really was a transformative experience in every sense of the word. And I'm going to let Hakeem talk about his experience.
Plus one to everything that John just said. The academics is the last. This is truly the last thing that I think about when I think about my Harvard experience. Yes, it trained me. Actually, did it train me for the job I have now? Maybe. But I learned a lot and I loved my classes. Don't get me wrong. I learned more than I had learned in any other part of my life. I studied so many different things. So, I mentioned before I studied computer science and statistics, which is great. My minor was African American Studies, which really should be renamed Black Studies because it doesn't necessarily deal with just America. Took a lot of classes on the Caribbean. I took a lot of classes on Africa. And it was like that academic experience is very, very rich. The professors that you are learning under are the best people in their fields in the entire world, which is really magical and really a very fantastic opportunity. But again, yes, you have your professors for the like 80 classes that you take over your time there, but you also have thousands of other students from everywhere around the world who are brilliant. Like that, and that was my main reason for going. When people ask me why I don't want to go to Harvard, I always said, listen, I never want to be the smartest person in a room. I want to always be learning from everybody around me. And when I say learning, I mean not just in the classroom, I mean outside of the classroom too, in the dining halls, on the field, etc. Learning from people, meeting new people, and getting to know the world around you and what it means to be a person, a human. Yeah, I think that was the best experience, and that's the thing that people really look back at Harvard and think about. As a fresh alum who has other friends who are fresh alums, like that's the thing that we miss most: the people and the atmosphere. I'm sure if you all want to know about research, I did undergraduate research. I had jobs on campus. I worked in diversity work on campus too. I did all of those things. But again, the thing that always comes above those things is the people, the friends you make, the people you meet. So I do not underestimate that.
And speaking of the people as well, it would be remiss of us to not talk about Harvard's housing system because that plays a major role in actually forcing people to become friends in a way. So when you're a freshman, which is the first year on campus, you're just somewhat randomly assigned to housing. You do fill out a form and then they try and match you. But coming towards the end of your freshman year, you actually get to choose who you want to live with, because what happens is at the end of freshman year, you form these groups of people of up to 8 people called your blocking group. And then Harvard has 12 upperclassmen houses. And what that means is housing for people for the remaining 3 years of your time. And you're randomly placed in that house with the people who you choose to live with. And so what actually ends up happening is that a lot of life gets surrounded around like your housing activities. So for example, yes, I was a part of all of these organizations, etc. But where did I make the majority of my friends? From just talking to random people in the dining hall and, those conversations that you're having, debating some hotly contested topic at 3 a.m. when you should be sleeping. Like those are really some of the fondest memories from college. And I'd also say as well that the way that Harvard does it is that each house is almost like a self-contained ecosystem because they have their own library, their own dining hall, their own gym. So there actually almost is no reason to leave your house except for classes. And even that, a lot of classes are streamed online as well, even in a non-COVID world. So just wanted to touch quickly upon that housing system.
Yeah, and just to add to that, as a freshman or a fresh person, you are placed in the yard. So you're in this historic space, and only the first years are in that space, and you share that dining hall, which looks like something out of Harry Potter, the dining hall. And you all eat in that space. Then you get moved to the houses. And in the houses, you also have some graduate students who are there as what are called tutors or advisors. And I actually served as one of those when I had a fellowship and was doing some graduate work. And so there's like a subgroup within the houses of those people who come from all different graduate schools. So all the many different graduate schools that are available. So you're able to also meet them and learn from them and ask questions of them. And they have roles and responsibilities within the house as well. And so, while you move into a house, you can also move among the houses. So you eat, most people live and on campus. Most people, you don't rent spaces off campus. Most people, the overwhelming majority, live on campus. They eat in the dining halls, and you can go from one dining hall to the other. You don't have to eat in your house every night. And yeah, so it encourages you to move around the system, but it also encourages you to build a community within your house. I should say.
Yeah. Just in terms of experience, sorry, you have a lot of ability to craft and create your own experience. Like,
yeah.
My first year, I'm not quietly sure how this happened. My first year, I did crew, which is rowing. And for me, one of the mind-blowing experiences, I grew up in Barbados. If it rains too hard in Barbados, people don't go out. And I remember signing up for a session in the middle of winter and tons of snow, and I couldn't imagine we were going to do anything. And I got this call, Toppy, where are you? We're waiting on you. How soon do you think you can get down here? Get down where? To do what? In the snow? It's cold outside. But the type of person I was, I wasn't gonna leave in the year, so I stuck it out for the entire year, and that was it. But it gave me a group of friends, an experience that was totally different from what I had at the house. I lived at what John calls Forzheimer House. Its correct name is North House. That's where I lived. But it was a total different experience. It was a different set of friends. And you were able to create, based off your interests, slightly different experiences. And different people will have different experiences based off of their friends.
Yeah, there's just so many opportunities to explore. Like John had never played polo, he played polo. You don't have to have ever rowed before to row crew. I also rowed crew, but I did house crew, and I had the same experience. Jason, it was raining, and I was like, I'm not going out on the river in this. Why would I do that? But, I had to go. So I went, and I didn't give up either. You rowed, I rowed. So it was an interesting experience. I had never rowed before. So you don't have to play a sport. You can play a sport. If you're playing at a very high level, you can play at a varsity level, but you're not limited to that. You could play junior varsity, or you could play within the house community. There's a sporting component. There's a performing component. There's anything you can think of, really, is there. Harvard is in Cambridge. It's a little bit across the river from Boston, and Harvard Square, the school sort of goes all around the center of the square, and there are, the yard, there's the river, which a lot of people every day are running and walking around, having picnics. There's bookstores, coffee shops, clothing stores, movie theaters, the subways right there that takes you into Boston to a major international airport. It's not sort of Uber city, but it's in a city. You know what I mean? It's not suburban, but it's not super urban either. So it's kind of in the middle, but you're definitely connected and you can explore. I mean, I did volunteer things in inner city Boston from there, in Jamaica and communities in Dorchester and Roxbury and places like that, going from Harvard out there. You know, you really can craft, as Jason said, you can craft, and people are asking questions about summer study. So there are offices on the campus, like the Office of Career Studies. What is Office of Career Services? OCS.
Yeah, the Office of Career Services.
Career Services
Office of
and
International Education.
yeah, they give you help. They have information about funding opportunities for summer programming, summer jobs, summer internships that are paid or unpaid, and also winter ones, because they have some that you can do that are shorter in January in between terms. So you can try to explore things and get different experiences. And then when it comes time to decide what you're going to do after college, you know, people come recruiting for you to go and work. John was recruited, I'm sure Hakeem was recruited, or they went from their undergraduate summer program. They may not have been offered a job for the following fall after their graduation. And so there's sort of a network of that exists. And then there are also opportunities to go your own path and say, well, I want to take a year off before I do anything else. And maybe I want to travel. People are asking about summer foreign language. There's studying abroad programs you can do. Some people get jobs in the summer to write for the Lonely Planet. So they go to wherever, to France, and their job is to travel around and then update the Lonely Planet, which is a travel book. Well, it's probably online now, or both. You know, so there's just and all the information is there. It's all online now too, right? So, and then there are people whose job it is to help you navigate through all of that and figure out what's the best thing for you. There's psychology programs. People are asking, can you major in psychology? Can you major in genetics? Can you do coding? All of that is there. I mean, I don't know how to convey to you the realm, the range of things, options of subjects to study that you can be exposed to explore, and then, you know, chart whichever way you want to go next.
I wanted maybe just to quickly respond to some Harvard Law School. I keep seeing that come up. It's like a different, it's like you going to George's and asking me about KC. It's a totally different structure, totally different school. They're in the same area, but it's not the same school. I'm not sure what the requirements are, but law.
Yeah, so I know I applied to law school, so I know I didn't go, but I applied. So what you have to do is take the LSAT.
Yeah.
And you have to get a good grade on that. You have to do an application process. You do an interview process, and you can have done whatever major you want. I mean, obviously some majors are more akin to law, like history or government, but you don't have to have done those. Similarly, for medical school, you don't have to have been a biology major or a science major. I had a roommate who remains one of my best friends today, who was a history and literature major of France and America, went and did the Lonely Planet thing in the summer, worked and was a volunteer teacher for a year, and then after that decided she wanted to go to medical school. And she came back in 1 year, did all her pre-med courses, applied and got into Harvard Medical School, went to Harvard Medical School, and is now like a primary care physician, married to another physician, you know, living in the US, right? She's an American. So she had no pre-med anything when she was at Harvard, nothing. And she just decided and went back and just did all the pre-med applications, filled out her applications, did the MCAT, got her references, did work in a lab, did whatever, and then went to medical school. So law school, unlike Jamaica, it's medical school is the same way. You don't go in, it's a 4-year liberal arts college. So you don't go in and do medicine right from the beginning. You can do medical subjects. You can major in a medical subject like biology, chemistry, biochemistry, whatever it is. But that is not medical school. Then you have to apply to medical school thereafter, right? And the same thing for law. There's no pre-law. You do whatever, and then you take the requirements for law and you go along.
Also, I saw a question come up briefly in the chat about the dining experience. So everyone at Harvard is on a unlimited meal plan. So if you are a hungry belly person like I am, then you can go in and eat 3 dinners if you want. the food quality, it varies from house to house. Some houses have better food than others. And the food, they normally give a wide range of options, and it spans all sorts of cuisines from Caribbean, although I cannot recommend the jerk chicken, sadly, Indian, Thai, everything you can think of. And most dining halls do this, but like if you have a recipe that like, you know, your mother or your father used to make at home, you can actually give them the recipe and they will make it and add it to the menu. So I just wanted to quickly touch upon that. And then one other thing as well, Rebecca mentioned the community and Jason spoke about being able to craft the experience. For me, even though, you know, Hakeem and I were the only Jamaicans on campus directly from the island, we're actually able to create our own communities. As I spoke about the consortium of schools within Boston, we actually formed a group called Jamaicans in Boston, where we met up every month with other Jamaicans from MIT and BU, and we got dinner together, normally at a Jamaican restaurant, or sometimes we'd go over to each other's dorms and hang out. So there are ways to build your community up however you want it.
Yeah, and I would say too, when I was there was my friend from Campion again was there too, but she did her A-levels, so she was a year below me. But to have her there was wonderful. And we were like the Caribbean, you know, there are a lot of Jamaican Americans or people of Jamaican descent who are part of the Caribbean Club, and we tend to be the majority for the other islands. You might have Barbadian or St. Vincent, but Jamaicans are the ones of Jamaican descent are the more new, make up the majority. And we have, you know, every year there's different events on campus where cultural groups come together and perform and share food and do this and do that. And, you know, one year we had no money. So, and this was after like Hurricane Gilbert or something. And so we did at one of these events, and we made bully beef and crackers because that's what we could afford. And that's what we gave the people to eat. And we told them that this was a very, people like this food. It's a common thing, and it's, you know, we seasoned it up. It was tasty. But then my friend Kelly, her father was a radio personality, and he went on the radio and he said, can you imagine my daughter and her friend got to this big university, and what they're telling the people there that we eat is bully beef and crackers. But that was all we could make at the time. So we were trying our best to at least have some food to offer. But that story is there to say that it was wonderful to have my friend there with me who understood you know, what it meant to be there, to be away from home in the winter, somebody who we understood each other, you know. So it would be great if you go in numbers. That's what I'm trying to say. But we had other friends in other universities in Boston, and we used to do the same thing that John and Hakeem are mentioning. So are there more questions? I'm mindful we've been going for quite a while. Is there a program? No, there's no specific program to apply. What we would suggest is that you go online and you look at the university. We're going to post some resources from the admissions office. We're going to give them to Ruth through the ministry and the NSSC that you can access. Sort of easy access. John, you're going to help me with that, please, and Hakeem. And, you know, you can explore them and think about it. And again, everything that we're telling you, with the exception of things that are Harvard specific, like the houses and the dining hall and the location of Boston, is quite relevant to many other schools in the US that are liberal arts colleges or four-year colleges, right? Where the majority live on campus. So, I mean, if you want to apply, you go through sixth form, you begin the process of exploring, and you start the summer, like now, leading into the summer between 6B and 6A, and you start to consider your options, right? I don't know if my fellow alums want to add anything as we wrap up. And you work on your Common App, right, which can be used in any of the different college applications. Somebody's asking Hakeem about a full scholarship. So it isn't called a scholarship. It's called, as Hakeem had mentioned earlier, you might not have been in the session at the time, it's financial aid and it's need blind. So when you're applying and you fill out the financial aid forms, they'll ask you, what can you pay? What can your parents pay? Now, I mean, you can't lie about that. They ask to see evidence of what you can pay or cannot pay. So they will look at the income levels of your family, and they know how much it costs to go there, your living expenses, the traveling expenses. They have matrices to formulas to calculate all of that. And then they will look at your application, and on the merit of that application, on the merit of the narrative that you have crafted to put forth your passion or your interest in the school, they will then come back to you and make offers, right? And there are some scholarships you might be, or some packages you might be eligible for. If you have dual citizenship like I did, then you're eligible for certain things that people who are international students are not eligible for, and vice versa, right? And the aim is not to go to school and put yourself in major debt, major financial debt. That is not the aim, wherever you go to school. So you want to make sure that wherever you're going, you're not putting yourself into major financial debt to have to be repaying loans at interest thereafter. Somebody's asking again about law. It's on the same. So all the graduate schools are in and around Harvard Square, with the exception of the medical school, and the School of Public Health, which are in Boston. But the majority are in or around the main campus. And you can take courses at those schools as an undergraduate. You can take courses at the law school, you can take courses at the ed school, you can take courses at the Kennedy School, which is the Kennedy School of Government. I did that. People do that, right? And there are joint programs with those schools that you can also pursue. So when you finish, you might have had an undergraduate major in this, but you did X number of courses at the Kennedy School.
Rebecca,
Go ahead, John.
Two things I want to touch upon. So with regards to financial aid, I also was on full financial aid as well. And I would say that the school is actually very cognizant of people's financial statuses, and they do provide help in addition to waiving tuition and boarding fees. So for example, when I arrived on campus, they also gave you a stipend specifically to like set up your dorm room, get books, et cetera, et cetera. Then when the cold months came around, which came around quite quickly, they gave you another stipend again, specifically so that you can get a winter coat. And so they're constantly checking in, making sure that you're comfortable, making sure that you're affording the experience and having the best experience that you're supposed to have. And then the second thing that I want to touch on as well is that with any school, even after you've sent in all of your documents and they've determined what they believe your need is, you can petition and say, hey, you offered me X, but X is not enough. And so I did that with some of the other schools that were stingy with their money, and they actually did give me a greater amount of financial aid / scholarship. And I know people who did that with Harvard as well. So even if what they're coming with straight out of the gate does not fully cover your need, it doesn't mean that all hope is lost.
There's a question about, can you use the same application? No, you wouldn't use the same application for undergraduate for graduate, because your experiences, your whole perspective could have would most likely have changed. So your narrative will have grown. So you might reflect on it and say, when I was applying 4 years ago, I thought this, and now after my 4 years here, I think this and why, and going to this school will, I think, take me further along that journey, maybe from that angle, but probably not really. There's a question here, Jason, that's for you about, did you have a problem with doing 4 years extra of schooling for medical, the fact that you went to a US college and then you went to medical school meant that you had 4 more years before you then went to medical school and specialized. And was that a problem to you?
No. Rebecca, were you talking about Sapphire's question about essays to different schools?
I can't see the questions that well. I don't know who asked it.
Well, yeah, because I interpreted that question to mean like different undergraduate schools through the common application.
It could be, yes.
So I will answer that part of it if you meant it the way that Rebecca understood it. Rebecca's answer holds. For the common application, there's a common application that you use to apply to a lot of American schools where you actually do use the same essay for a lot of them. You input the same information and it sends it to several schools because a lot of people apply to very many schools, and you should also apply to more than one school, please. But on the common application, each school also has the right to ask you for an additional essay, ask you additional questions that might not be, that for information that might not necessarily be gleaned from the general part. So that's why I answered in the chat both. Sorry, Dr. Toppin, you can go ahead.
Thanks for that clarification, Hakeem. Yes, that's probably the way she meant it. And Jason has answered in the chat about medical school. So
medicine is such a demand in terms of time in your life. I actually think, why would I want to do this straight out of high school? I think sometime you may, as I can sit now and say, you may realize the error of your ways and pick something better to do with your life. I'm just kidding, but there's so much out there for you to experience before you jump on that path. And that's just my perspective. There are people who've gone straight in and as the British system and they're fine, but I have no regrets in seeing something totally different before going into medicine.
You're on mute, Rebecca.
I was saying, I think we may have answered most of the questions in the chat and that we will put it. So there's a question about, is this meeting a one-time meeting? So we did, I hope we're recording. It says recording. So it will be archived and shared so you can access it. We have done some sessions. Hakeem and I did one recently for Immaculate at the request of the guidance counselor there. If you are at schools and you think it would be helpful, it's something we might be able to do. Not maybe it won't be us per se, but we have other alumni who might be willing to participate, in a Zoom session. This Zoom world is making it easier for us to get our messages out. So, we can be including John and Hakeem and they're not even on the island. And it's easy for Jason to join from his work, whereas for him to have to go to, Campion might have been more tricky scheduling wise, or to JC or to wherever, right? Or to outside of Kingston, right? So we would entertain that, and you can contact us through the NSSC, through Ruth, or just direct message us on Instagram at Harvard Jamaica. Yeah, how about I keep seeing new messages pop up and can't always see all of them.
I think that was everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So we will post some resources so you can get access and learn more. And then, I would encourage you to work on your Common App and to definitely, like all writing, it's not something that you write once and then it's perfect the first time. Usually you have to go back and think through it and polish it a bit, make sure it carries your voice, reflects your voice, and seek help with that. And, I don't know, we'll talk about maybe ways that we might be able to help with that. Maybe we can put some tips up online, or I don't know. There might be some way we can help with that, which we would communicate via Ruth and the NSSC and on our social media.
Maybe just quickly, the last question I responded was, can you reapply to Harvard after getting rejected? I can't imagine so. What I would say though is, despite what we're saying, that there are so many schools that you can have a great experience at.
Yeah.
That, there are big schools, small schools, all schools that you can go and have an amazing experience at. So I don't think you should go into, you can want to go to Harvard. I promise you, not getting into Harvard is not the end of the world. You can go on, do well, and come back for grad school if that's your path.
Right.
Definitely not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with Dr. Toppin. I think that, if you take away one thing from today's meeting, it should be that you should explore your options. University of West Indies is one of the best universities in the world, certainly in this hemisphere. I think that is an excellent option, but I personally do not believe that it should be your only option. I think that you should, cast your net wide, see what interests you, see what opportunities are out there. And then once you have taken all of that in, you have all of the information, then you make a decision. So definitely apply to multiple schools as your time and resources allow.
John, any final words from you?
Yeah, I would just say, to reiterate what everyone said, Harvard is a great school, but there are other fantastic schools out there. So do your research, talk to people. Here's a tidbit, reach out to people, whether through your networks, you can ask your guidance counselors. If there are any alumni who they're in contact with, who they can put you in, you can search for people through LinkedIn as well. We're usually more than willing to help people who are coming up through the process with their essays or with interview prep, etc. I've had many a student reach out to me for advice and for just an extra pair of eyes. And just enjoy the process and trust that wherever you end up is the right place for you.
Yeah, we had talked about maybe doing a mock interview and putting it up on our social media too. Maybe we'll be able to pull that off. That might be helpful with some interview tips and some potential questions that you might get. People are putting in the chat what to do over the summer, that some of the deadlines have passed. Of course, COVID has really impacted summer, last summer and this summer. So if you've missed deadlines for things, what you could do is think about what are you interested in? What might you be able to do over the summer? It could be volunteering, even if it's virtually, in a field that you're interested in, or try and get an internship. If you have to work for the summer, you have to work for the summer as well. And that's also important. That's part of your narrative. Or you do both, part-time, whatever it is, but definitely do something with your summer that relates to something that speaks to your soul, right? That's part of the passion that Jason was talking about. And you need to have experiences that you can draw on to do these. The more experiences you have to draw on, the easier it is for you to determine how to craft your Common App and the other applications. If you're interested in the sciences, you may want to subscribe to, or maybe you already do this, to online journals or news sources and read them regularly. Those are the kinds of questions you'll get on an application. Like what was the most interesting book you read recently, or movie that you watched, or song that you listened to and why, or what journals do you read on a regular basis and why? So if you're interested in the environment, then they'd be looking to see that some of these journals are relating to climate action, or that there's a thread, right? So think about those, and go to your guidance counselor and ask, for guidance. That's their part of their job as to what you can do over the summer, especially COVID wise. Yeah, and I want to thank you all for spending so much time with us. And we, again, I want to reiterate, it's what we've said is not limited to Harvard per se. It applies to schools in Canada, elsewhere in the US, probably in the UK as well now too. The process is quite different from when I was applying and probably when Jason was applying, but there's still some common threads, which is that you really want to tell your story so that the people who are receiving them want to learn more about you. You get an interview and then you seal the deal with that interview, right? In the best way you can. And all of that will only help you to grow as an individual, which is what we all want, right? And I have 2 children that I have to shepherd through this process in the next few years. So this session was also useful for me as a parent. So thank you all. I don't know, Rihanna, are you still with us? So follow us on social media. We'll try to post and we can stay in touch. And, hopefully this recording will prove helpful to people as well as we go forward. So thank you all for listening. Jason, Hakeem, John, thank you for your time. And, enjoy your weekend and stay safe, everybody.